Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's Hangout. We're going to be talking through a clerkship application process, the actual application, so how it works, how we select candidates for interview. Joining me tonight is members of the KWM Recruitment Committee who share some insights and their experiences throughout the application process. We can also take your questions live on social media, so please post your questions to Facebook or in the chat room below. To gain further insight, if you haven't already, you can also download our app, KWM Become, and that's available via the Apple and Google stores. But to get us started, I'm going to introduce myself and then ask the Recruitment Committee to do the same. So my name is Sam Garner. I'm the Graduate Resourcing Manager at KWM. I've been with the firm 15 years this year and have always worked in resourcing for the firm. And I work across nationally our centres, so Sydney, Melbourne, Canberra, Brisbane and Perth, but also closely linked with our other offices, including London, Hong Kong and China. I might now kick over to Jason to do some introductions there.
Hi, I'm Jason Watts. I'm a partner in the Mergers and Acquisitions Group and I'm co-chair of the Recruitment Committee. I joined the firm as a summer clerk myself, and I've been with the firm since I was a young lawyer.
I'm Shabarika Rajat Kumar. I'm a senior associate in the Mergers and Acquisitions team. I work quite closely with Jason. I started at the firm as a grad, trained here for about 4 years before going to New York for a few years where I studied a master's degree and also worked. And I've just recently come back to the firm about just over a year ago. I was on the recruitment committee before I left, so I'm happy to be back doing recruitment stuff for KWM again.
And my name is Max Allen. I'm a senior associate in our financial markets and regulation team. I started here as a summer clerk in 2010 and have worked in our Hong Kong office as well as our Sydney office and have been involved with recruitment since I was a grad.
Great. Well, thank you, everybody. Before we kick off on any questions, I did just want to give a brief run-through of the KWM application process, just to give you some context. So applications are actually held on our careers website. So you just go to the KWM website, go to careers and graduate, and you'll see the applications there. Currently, Sydney and Canberra are open, but Melbourne will be following on the 11th of July and Perth on the 18th of July. Brisbane have finished their recruitment for this year, so their next applications open in February 2017. Now, based on sort of the state guidelines plus the different centres recruitment process, the applications can be different across the centres, so please make sure you have a look at what each centre requires. But for Sydney and Canberra, we just ask you to fill out an application form. But for Perth, Brisbane and Melbourne, you can also attach your resume and cover letter. So slightly different across our centres. The other piece of information I'd just like to provide is this year we have partnered with RARE, who are a contextual recruitment system. It's not compulsory for candidates to participate in the RARE contextual recruitment process, but we would strongly urge applicants to do so, as the information provided will enable us to better understand your experiences, achievements and skills against the backdrop of any unique personal circumstances and in light of any adversity you may have overcome, whether it be educational, financial or personal. Now, once we've actually received your applications and the applications are closed, and I will sort of let you know that we don't look at any applications till the formal close date, so please don't think you'll be disadvantaged if you apply on the last day. But what we do is once the applications are closed, we go through a fairly rigorous process around the actual reviewing. What we do is take off personal information, so we won't see your name or gender and different information, and that's so our reviewers don't look at your application with any unconscious bias. So we've been doing that for around 5 years now, and it's very much part of our recruitment process. We also have your application reviewed by sort of numerous members of our recruitment committee, so that we don't have one person evaluating a candidate. We'd like to have multiple people review the application. So that really sort of allows us to get a very thorough review process going. Now, that hopefully has given you a little bit of context. I might now throw some questions to our recruitment committee to kick off. But as I said, we can receive live questions, so please feel free to send us any questions that you would like answered. But we might start with Jason Shabarika, and I might ask you, in your opinion, what makes a good written application?
So I think a good written application is one that gets across fairly succinctly the key things that someone's done that they think are demonstrative of the things that they may bring to an employer. So we obviously review a lot of applications and we read them all quite carefully. So the ones that stand out are the ones that really draw out what those things are sort of quickly and well. So you shouldn't feel you have to put everything that you've done since you got to university in your application. You should focus on the things that you've thought that you did and you did well, and that tell something about who you are and why you're interested in commercial law, and that might be relevant to that.
And just adding to what Jason's just said, I think good applications where you read them and you get a kind of a sense of who the person is without having to meet, applications that I think would stand out. So to the extent you can inject some of your personality, be that through, you know, calling out things that you've done or that you're particularly interested in, I think we're keen to get a sense of who you are through your application.
I absolutely
Max,
agree with
anything else to add?
No, I'd absolutely agree with that. Our clerks do really interesting things, and I like to read about them in a way that makes it clear and is easy to read.
Fantastic, thank you. Now, another question, slightly harder this time, but and again, we might start with you, Max, if that's okay. But what skills and capabilities do you look for when you're looking through the application?
So at a firm like ours, I don't think there's any perfect candidate, so I'm not looking for any particular skill set. The different practice teams have a range of different work types that we need different skills for. I think that what I look for is someone that's positive, enthusiastic, someone that's keen to give things a go, and who makes it clear on their application the way that the things they have done are relevant to what they're looking to do in the future. So there's no particular checklist I go through. It's just, as Shabarika said, looking to get a feel for the person and their personality, and thinking that they are interested in doing commercial law and learning more about what we do.
Jason and Shabarika, anything else to add to that?
Yeah, I think what Max has said is right. I would add that more and more we're looking for people who can adapt to a changing environment, because things are very fluid at the moment, both in the sort of general corporate economy and in the practice of law. So we're looking at people who are prepared to adapt and change with the way things change in our business. On top of the sort of harder technical skills that people who work here have, most people who are successful at this job have very strong interpersonal skills as well, because we work very closely with other advisors, with our clients, and with each other internally. And so those interpersonal skills are quite an important foundation.
I think Jason and Max have covered it pretty well, Sam, so nothing further from me.
No problem. Thanks, Shabarika. Now, I also wanted to, I've collected some questions from our different centres around the, you know, the kind of standard questions and the questions that we get asked a lot when we're on campus. So I thought I might ask you a few of those so that we can cover off some information that might be useful. So I'm going to start with, how important is legal work experience? Jason, I might fire that one at you if that's okay.
So we recognise that some people will have done some legal work experience before. For me personally, before I joined the firm, I had had no legal work experience. I'd worked in warehouses packing clothes. So we actually take a very broad approach to that, and we're more interested in what you've done, what you think you got out of what you did, and listening to you talk about it, and hearing about sort of how what you've done has added to your skill set. So, you know, most forms of work experience will tell us something about a person and how they fit into a work environment. And so it's not necessary to have particular legal work experience. If you have got legal work experience, it's obviously beneficial, because you'll have a bit more of a feel for what it's like to work in a law firm, but it's by no means essential. And many of the people who start here will have done quite different things other than working in law firms when they come to the summer clerk interviews.
Certainly when I was going through the summer clerkship process, I sort of clerked for some barristers, which I thought was kind of the area of my CV that most people are going to focus on and ask lots of questions about, but not at all. I got asked a lot more questions about my customer service work I'd done for a broker-dealer, other random things on my CV, and I think when you're going through the process, people are looking for people who've done different sorts of things, but, you know, work experience that still relates to what we do here.
Absolutely. Often a job working at a bar or a restaurant is just as valuable as showing good client relationships or the interpersonal skills that Jason was talking about as a legal job. So it's the application and then the interviews really give us an opportunity to learn a bit more about what you've been interested in and what you've learned from things you have done.
All right. Now, I might be slightly different now and ask myself a question, being from the HR focus, but I know one of the questions we get asked a lot is, do KWM have a GPA cutoff? We don't, and we haven't done for a number of years. The reason we don't do that is we want to read all the applications and people's personal circumstances. Often that can interplay into your GPA, but also that the universities don't have the same marking scheme. So again, we don't find that doing a GPA cutoff is effective at all. So I know that is a question that often we get asked, but there is no GPA cutoff at KWM, and everybody's application is read, and as I said, usually numerous times. So I'll probably just answer that question. Moving on more broadly to the team again, I guess this is probably one of the most popular ones we actually get asked, and I always really like everyone's responses on this one. Do you need a commerce degree? Max, over to you.
Sure. So I work in banking and finance in a financial markets team, which some people would think is quite technical. Commerce would be helpful. And my answer is absolutely not. There's no need for a commerce degree. There's no need for an economics degree. A number of the partners and senior associates and other lawyers in our group have Russian literature majors, theology majors, what else? History. So there's certainly no requirement for commerce, and all you really need, as I was saying before, is just a willingness to learn, and everything else sort of comes through the training and just being prepared to listen to our clients and understand their business. So absolutely, a resounding no.
Jason Shabarika.
Yeah, that's right. I think at the end of the day, what you need is some commercial aptitude, but it's not something that you have on day one, whether you've done a commerce degree or not, or whether you've done some work in some sort of commercial environment. It's something that is learned over a good sort of 5+ years, which is, what I think is the time period that people start gaining true commercial aptitude and have had enough experience to start developing that. But most of it is learned on the job. And so, you know, a commerce degree is obviously a good degree if you've got it, and is helpful, but it's not required, even in the commercial groups. And as Max said, you know, any degree you've done is really relevant, because what we are about is we're sort of in a cycle of constant learning. I mean, I've been doing this job for over 20 years and I'm still learning in the job. And so any form of sort of study or other thing that demonstrates your sort of curiosity for learning is what interests us more than anything else.
I mean, I have a commerce degree with accounting and finance majors, but I think majority, if not almost all of my learning has been done on the job, like Jason was talking about. So if I had my time again, I'd probably go back and do that French and history major that I probably wanted to do, and it wouldn't have made much of a difference to my practice.
Oh, that's good. And I do know a couple of times, actually, I've done some analysis on the banking and finance group on this piece, and I think it was between 60 and 70% each time I've done it had a non-commerce degree. So definitely not required. Okay, well, we'll keep going with some questions. I think we've got some coming through. But in the interim, do you look for any extra or certain extracurricular activities when you're looking at an application? So is that important to you, and do you look for any in particular? Jason, I might start with you if that's okay.
Yeah, I think we just generally like to see someone who's well-rounded. And so we don't look for anything in particular. We don't have a checklist which requires people to have done sort of university activities, sports, or any particular things. We really just look to see what makes up the person who's in front of us and what they've done and how they talk to it. So we're as interested in finding out what a candidate has done, why they've done it, what they got out of it, and what that tells us about them and who they are.
Max or Shabarika, anything else to add to that?
Not really. I think that people's extracurriculars give us an opportunity to get to know a bit more about what those people are interested in, and a number of our clerks have done some really interesting things, and the application process is a good opportunity for us to learn more about what they do and how they see that's relevant to what they want to do in the future, but nothing in particular.
Fantastic. I know we also get the question sometimes, and I think it's a bit of a kind of conflict question where people ask whether they should put their interest in human rights and pro bono work in their application form or their cover letter. Can I ask what your opinion is on that? Again, I might just start with Jason and Shabarika, but what would be your view on if someone talks regarding their sort of human rights and pro bono work experience or desire to do that?
I think, again, if that's what someone is interested in, then they should definitely put it down if it's important to them and it's something that they've enjoyed, and they should then come along to an interview and speak about why they've enjoyed it and what they've got out of it. I think what you can gather from what we're saying is we're more focused on individuals and what individuals have done rather than trying to put people into sort of stereotyped boxes and have them sort of tick off a checklist. So I would put pro bono and humanitarian pursuits in the same category as any other interest that someone has. If it's something that they're genuinely and enthusiastically interested in, they should definitely call it out. But equally, people stuff down because we're not looking for anything sort of in terms of that particularity in the way we review our applications. As I said before, we're just looking for the roundedness of a person and what they've done, and then ultimately in an interview for people to be able to talk to what they've put on their application form and show us sort of why they've done it and what they got out of it.
And yeah, I would agree with that. Certainly a lot. Oh, sorry, Max.
No, please.
Certainly a lot of the lawyers here work in M&A, but also, you know, dedicate time to pro bono. I know Jason does pro bono work. I do a lot of work with the National Breast Cancer Foundation. You know, people should list the sorts of things they're interested in that give us an idea of who they are. But they should also, you know, demonstrate an understanding and an interest in sort of the commercial aspects of legal practice, which is what we also do on a day-to-day basis.
Absolutely. I remember when I was at university, there was a number of pro bono opportunities available that I took, and I was really interested in being involved in, and that carried through as a summer clerk, and as a grad I stayed involved in the things that our firm presents. So certainly if you think they're relevant, you enjoyed doing those things, then by all means call them out in the application.
Great, thank you. Now, we've had a couple of questions. One of them that has come through is just asking if you can apply for this example, the Sydney and Melbourne office, but I'll just respond around applying for more than one KWM office. We're very happy for you to apply to different offices. As I said, the programs do slightly differ and the timing can be different across those centres. So you can certainly apply to multiple offices. What we would do though is during that process, we'll probably have a chat to you about if there is an office of preference so that we can help you navigate that application process and the interview process. So there is no problem about applying for multiple offices, but as I said, if you do proceed through, we will probably have conversations with you regarding if there's a particular preference, but very happy to receive multiple applications, and we often do. Now, I had another question just around sort of what we're often asked, and that's with regards to should I, if I've got a particular interest in a practice group, should I put that into the application? And if I don't have a particular interest in a practice group, will I be disadvantaged? So I might ask Max to answer that first, and then we'll move on to Jason and Shabarika. But Max, what's your views on sort of stressing if you're particularly interested in a practice area or vice versa and you're not?
I think if you do have a genuine interest in a practice area, then by all means put it down. And if you want to talk about it in your application and then talk about it in an interview, put it down, because people are often, if I see someone that says they're interested in banking, I'm interested to have a chat with them about why they're interested in banking. But if you don't have an interest in a particular team or don't feel like you know enough about what we do at the firm to put down any one particular team, like for example, I think that's fine. For example, at university, doing a law degree, you may not get a huge amount of exposure to the law that's relevant to derivatives or financial markets. So I don't think that you need to pretend like you are interested, but if you do have an interest, then put it down.
I certainly agree with Max. I don't think anyone would expect you to know by now what areas you're interested in. I certainly didn't before my clerkship, and a big part of my clerkship was getting to know as much about as many areas as I could. But at the same time, you know, the big theme of your application is to give us a sense of who you are. So to the extent you are particularly interested in an area or particularly passionate about a particular rotation, I think it's a good idea to call it out to give us a better sense of who you are.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think the things we do in each of the practice groups have evolved and changed over the years as well. And until you join a firm like King & Wood Mallisons and actually sit in a practice group and experience what they do, it is hard to know. And we've had plenty of people who've sworn on you know, relative's grave that they would only be they'd only be an M&A lawyer, and they've joined the firm and they've experienced a couple of groups, and then they've turned out to be a property lawyer or something else. So it really, you know, where you ultimately land is a combination of the experiences you have in different groups, the type of work you do while you're there, you know, a bit of some of it can be a bit of a lottery for people in terms of just doing some particularly interesting work in a group that they had no inclination that they would enjoy, but they turn out to enjoy it quite a lot. So it's interesting, as the guys say, to hear about any views you have on what practice areas you want to work in, because we can also have a conversation with you about what sort of work we do in those groups to help you understand whether that is a group you want to work in. But if like many people, you come to us just saying, I'm here to learn about what you guys do in each of the groups, and I'm using the summer clerkship to test that a little bit, we think that's a completely valid approach as well.
Excellent, thank you. Now we've had a question not regarding actually the clerkship applications, but the insight process, and I just thought I'd give anyone who's listening just a quick update on that. We have our clerkship applications open, but we also have our insight applications open, and that is a program which is focused at the sort of students before clerkship. So it is to give you an insight into commercial law before you go into clerkship application year. That's open at the moment for Sydney and Melbourne. And you can just, again, go and access those applications via our website. But that program's slightly different. We invite you into the firm sort of 4 times over the year to sort of provide you different information that you may not be able to access if you don't work in a law firm. So our first session is really, I guess, what's happening in the legal market at that time. So a partner or a senior associate will chat to you regarding the legal market. The second session is a bit more tailored. We like to think of it as speed dating for practice groups, but you'll hear directly from the practice groups with regards to what they do. So you've gone high level, then you go into sort of really what does a different practice group do. Mergers and acquisitions obviously is a good example. You know, what does that really mean? What type of work would I do as a junior lawyer, etc. Third session is usually skills-based sessions. So we generally take feedback from the group with regards to what they will find useful. So we've done everything from networking through to how to write applications, interviews, etc. So we'll talk to the group at that time regarding what might be useful to them. And then the fourth session is shadow a lawyer. So you'll get to spend half a day in the firm sitting with one of our junior lawyers and really experiencing what they do on a daily basis. So that is the Insight program, and we can always take questions via email as well if you've got any, if you want any further information on that. But that is also open for Sydney and Melbourne at the moment. Now I'm conscious of time, and we are probably just have time for sort of one last question. So I might start with you, Max, and then go to Jason Shabarika. But final question is, if you could give one tip to a candidate preparing their application, what would it be?
I'd say get started early and then sleep on it, think about it, edit it, and make sure that there's no need to rush. As you said at the start, Sam, we don't look at them until the cut-off date anyway, so spend some time reflecting on it, refining it, and making sure that the application says everything you want it to say and everything that's important to you about what you've done in a way that's clear and easy to read. Write it so that you think you would enjoy reading it again.
Yeah, I think that's right. That's good advice. And you know, sometimes it's good to get someone else to read it as well, just as a second set of eyes. And I think Max is right. You just take a bit of time on them. The ones that have been rushed are fairly obvious when you see them. The ones that are well thought out and people have taken their time on, again, it's obvious when you see them, and it's better for us when we get those, because they're far easier to read, and they tell us a lot more about the person, and they give us richer information about someone.
Yeah, just reiterating what Jason and Max have said. Take your time and really just try to give us a sense of who you are.
Brilliant. And the only other piece of information I would probably pass on is there isn't really a standard application process now across the firm. So each firm will have a unique process, may require different information, may ask you to answer questions, may ask you to do psychometric testing, etc. So I would also work out which firms you want to apply for. Take your time, work out what each firm individually wants, so you've got plenty of time. Some applications might take you more time than others, so really get yourself prepared with regards to all the firms you want to apply for and what they require. Some of the information you'll be able to cut and paste and share, which is absolutely fine, but sometimes the applications will be quite specific to that firm. Yes. Now, we have had just a quick question that's come in, so we'll try and just do one more question before we sign off. And this is just asking what we think KWM's key focuses and key strategies for growth are going to be in the new financial year. I might be nice actually and get you to answer that first, Jason, given your partner status. So what do you think KWM's key focuses and key strategies for growth will be in this financial year?
I think in the near term, we are just focusing on our you know, our sector-based strategy, which is where we target into sectors that we think are active. We think there's been increased interest in cross-border investment into Australia, and demonstrable increased investment in investment coming out of the region, so Asia, and in particular China. There's been a lot of renewed focus there, so we'll be leveraging our network to capitalise on that. And then I think longer term, which is really what we tend to look at more than the short term, is just looking at the capital flows across the region and developing those connections through the network, because there is a lot of activity in this part of the world. Obviously, there's some distracting stuff going on over there in Europe at the moment, and you know, the US has got an election coming up, so there's some distracting stuff going on there. So we'd be looking to see what happens out of our own election, and then go forward from there. But we're very focused on what particular areas are I guess running hot in Australia and more generally in the region. So a good example is something like health. There's a lot of activity in the health sector at the moment. There's been a lot of activity in infrastructure and projects, agri-business that we expect to continue, and they are all quite interesting areas in terms of the cross-border activity and the local players as well.
Fantastic, thanks. Max and Shabba, anything else to add?
I would add on that particularly the banking team, but the firm generally, are spending a lot of time trying to understand what technology will do to law firms and the practice of law. And so we dedicate a lot of time to fintech, financial technology, blockchain, smart contracts, and even moving into the world of AI, and trying to make sure that we as lawyers understand not only how that will affect our clients, which is critically important, but how that will affect us. And so a lot of our some of our day-to-day work now is trying to grasp how we can best service our clients with new technologies. And the other part in my practice specifically is there is a huge amount of regulation that's either just been introduced, new laws have just been passed, or new regulations are about to be introduced in Australia and internationally that will require a lot of legal analysis, compliance work, and sort of just making sure that you comply with the regulations. And so we're making sure we're as prepared as possible to help our clients with that changing environment.
Fantastic. Well, thank you. Well, we will probably wrap up now, but thank you everybody, particularly Max, Shabrika and Jason, for coming along tonight and sharing your insights. Just a reminder that Sydney and Canberra applications are open, closing 17th of July. Melbourne and Perth opening shortly. And as I mentioned before, if you haven't yet, please do download the KWM Become app. It really will hopefully give you a great insight into commercial law, and obviously in particular KWM. Our next Hangout will be Monday the 1st of August. That one will focus on interviews. So as we go through the recruitment process, we'll have different Hangouts on the various phases of the recruitment process. So next one will be interviews. We might even flip it round and ask our clerks to interview our partners. I'm not sure, but I probably shouldn't say that, otherwise no one will volunteer to help me with the Google Hangout. But thank you very much for everyone attending, and we look forward to talking to you again on Monday the 1st of August.
Thanks so much, everybody.